Welcome to the program. I'm Mark Imperial. This segment's being brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. I'm doing a series of spotlights on remarkable business intermediaries and brokers from around the world. And joining me on this segment is Scott Duke. He's the founder of Open Road. Scott, welcome to the program.
Hey, Mark, it's nice to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Scott, tell us a little bit about your work and tell us specifically who are the types of clients that you work with.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the market breaks into, it's fairly fragmented as far as if you're an intermediary who you're going to be working with, right? So for those of your listeners that are just kind of getting into the space, maybe, if you have a business that's doing under $1 million a year in revenue, you're likely going to be working with a business broker or a realtor. As you kind of move up that value ladder and you kind of get into the $5 to $100 million range, you're going to be working with an M&A advisor. And then if you get beyond that, you're going to be working with an investment banker. And then of course, beyond that is kind of going public if you're looking to transition. So that's kind of how it generally broadly breaks down. For us at Open Road, we work with individuals that are on the lower end of what they call the middle market. So business owners who have revenues anywhere between 2 million and 20 million, that's our sweet spot.
I appreciate that distinction. Tell us about those owners. They're great at starting a business, maybe running the day-to-day, but how about selling it? Are they experienced? What do they not know? What is it like when you first speak to them? What are the worries on their minds?
Yeah, most people are looking to understand process. And I mean, business owners are a really skilled set of individuals in general. Like myself, my background is I've had 11 companies and I'm kind of gritty. Like I'm the entrepreneur guy that has had the hot dog cart and the painting company and like work my way up the ladder to then, buy a company and build it and sell it to private equity. So we can work with kind of any kind of business owner and can talk the language with them because we understand what it's like on a day-to-day basis. But the challenge that a business owner runs into when they're looking at selling their companies, it's just something they haven't done before. Like likely you run your business and even if it's 5 years, by the way, 7 years is kind of the itch that people get when it's kind of the frustration burnout zone. So sometimes they'll be selling for that, or if they make it past that zone, they've likely run their company for 30 plus years. So they haven't really thought about selling, and it isn't something that they go through on a day-to-day basis. That's probably the biggest barrier. It's just an unknown. And if we think about like make it analogous to sport, it's like when you start a new sport, you just really don't know. You don't know what you don't know, and it takes a little bit of a while to learn it. And so if you're going to jump in and try and sell your company right out of the gates, you probably want some advisors along your side that have played the sport for call it the last 5, 10, 15 years.
And speaking of like timeline, you say 5 to 7 years, that 7 year itch. How long does it how far in advance should a business owner start to prepare their business for sale? Could you tell us a little bit about what that looks
Yeah.
like and what they should focus on?
Yeah, for sure. I think like the standard message that people will give to that question is never too early to start. But the reality is we're going to be hustling day to day in our business. And one day we're going to wake up and go, I don't know if I want to do this any longer, right? So there's some kind of triggering event that happens in your life if you're a business owner. Really what you want is if you have a sellable company, this is the challenge, right? Because a lot of people that are going to be listening to this, and I hate to break your heart right now, but you probably don't have a sellable company. And this comes from a guy that tried to sell 5 before he sold his first one successfully, right? And there, like on our, I know you're going to mention the website, but on our bottom of our website, we have the top main reasons why companies don't sell. The number one reason is that owners don't know what they're going to do next, right? So if you don't have that idea of like what you're doing next, then it's hard to kind of set your targets on that and move towards it. The next reason that there's owner dependence, all right, and that's a big piece. That's a difficult barrier to kind of leap over, and then it goes down to like customer concentration, key personal, and like whatever. There's a whole like slew of list of things, but the reality is first you got to figure out if your company's sellable. If it's sellable, then from there you can. If you have a sellable asset, you can sell it anytime. Doesn't matter. But let's assume you don't have a sellable asset because that's the boat that the majority of owners are in. You kind of want 2 years. 2 years it really takes you to get there. And that may sound like, well, yuck, I don't want that. I want my company gone tomorrow. But if you take those 2 years, you're going to sell it for so much more. It's the best return on investment you're going to get out of your time because those 2 years you can add in the industry, it's called an extra turn on the multiple. And for those that are kind of learning and educating themselves on this, businesses sell at a multiple. So in those 2 years, you can add an extra 1, 2 turns on your multiple. And each multiple is essentially a year of earnings, right? So if you work for 2 years, you get those earnings over those 2 years, plus each year you add an extra year of earnings. It's way, way better to take the time to prepare your company for exit.
Really fascinating insight. Now we're
Yep.
coming out of a pandemic, and that's triggered a lot of people to consider selling their businesses. So what's the reality though? Is this a good time to sell? What's it been like in your market?
Really good. Here, this is the thing that maybe people don't know. It's like, okay, and you probably do. So I may be preaching to the choir on this one. So much of everything's tied to the cost of capital and just the ease of getting financing. Because when you think about a business, it's like, all right, I'm going to go and I'm a buyer and I'm going to go out there and buy a business. Likely, I'm going to be leveraging a lot of that purchase price, right? So I'm going to put 30% down. The rest of it, I'm going to either, friends, family, whatever it might be. But likely, I'm borrowing from, especially in the U.S., from like the Small Business Administration, which will end up to 5 million. So likely, I'm going to a bank to get financing. It is so important like for the private capital markets that liquidity is available from the banking system, and right now it's actually pretty good. And where that's going to go, and I mean, we're filming this in May of 2022, so where that's going to go, no one has the crystal ball, right? But right now it's good, and when lending's good, selling is a good time to sell your business.
Right on. Scott, you'd mentioned a little bit about how you got here to this business. Take us back a little bit more and tell us what inspired you to become an intermediary and help others, and how'd you get started?
Yeah, I think that like if anyone goes back to their origin story, it's probably driven a little bit by pain. So when I was 24, I'd run a couple of companies prior to that, but when I was 24, I really ran my first real company, and we ran it over 5 years, and we built it to 5 locations. I had 30 some odd staff, and at the end of that, the road of that business, it deteriorated because of our shareholders had disagreement, and this sometimes happens, right? So that's why that business had to be sold or shut down, and it ended up being what is called in the industry an orderly liquidation, because it turned out that it was an unsellable asset. And this business was unsellable because of owner dependence. It was primarily dependent on me and some of the skill set that I had, because I was just a charismatic individual in the industry that we were operating in, was difficult to replace. And I knew nothing about business sales at the time, right? So that's my main driver for getting into this space. And I started reading books like what John Warlow's like Built to Sell and this kind of stuff. And now I have a library full of it. But really, that was the impetus for me to figure out, okay, if I'm going to take the time to build a company that's going to support my lifestyle and is kind of allows me the freedom of my lifestyle as well, I probably at the same time should build sellability into it, so that the day that I wake up and want to get out, I can just take it off the shelf and sell it, right? So that was the impetus for me to get into this industry, help other owners kind of avoid that pain that I went through after building that company and being not sellable.
Before I ask you my last question, Scott, is there anything that I didn't think to ask you that you feel is important to share with business owners who are considering selling today in today's economy?
I mean, there's like a billion things. There's like, it's ridiculous. Like we have a whole course, if people want to do it on their own, like DIY, it's 30 hours. And it took me a year and a half to build, that just guides people through step by step on how to do that. So there's a lot of things that we can't cover in this period of time in a podcast. I think the biggest thing though is if you think about your business as creating a sellable asset, this is the high level. Like if you have a publicly traded company, you can go and trade your shares at any period of time. If you have a privately held company, it's very difficult. And no matter, yeah, sure, a friend that sold their company and this and that, definitely, but it is very challenging to get the cash out of your business and like liquefy that asset, right? It's a challenging thing. So definitely think about it, research it, figure out the main things that you need to have in your company to create sellability. That's the biggest piece. If you can get that set up, remove owner dependence. Actually, if you want to take one big takeaway from this, one of the things I say is every day a step away. It's every day you go into your business, think about the actions and the activities that you're doing, how those actions and activities can be delegated or systematized. That's probably the biggest thing I'd want people to take away on this, because if you can do that, you can create a sellable asset.
Great insight. I love that. Every day a step away. Scott,
Yeah.
for folks listening who are considering selling their business and they'd love to speak with you, connect with you and learn more, perhaps take your course, please let us know how to connect with you and learn more.
Yeah, for sure. LinkedIn's probably the best way. My handle on LinkedIn and on YouTube actually is the Happy Deal Maker. And then Open Road's our company. It's OPN Road. People ask me why are you missing an E? Like only because that was taken by somebody else, so we shortened it. Anyway, so that's if you type in Scott Duke into Google Open Road, you're gonna get to me for sure.
Fantastic, Scott. This has been great. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing with my audience today. And I wish you continued success for you and for all of your clients.
Mark, you as well, and thanks again for having me on. Much appreciated.
That was Scott Duke, founder of Open Road. And this segment's been brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published to educate consumers, grow their practices, and to leave a legacy. That's all for now. I'm Mark Imperial, and thanks for joining me.